Shepherd is a term that is very common in salvation history. Perhaps one of the most favorite psalms we hear is Psalm 23, which says, "The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want. In verdant pasture he leads me, he refreshes my soul." When it came time to choose the second king of Israel, because they didn't have much luck with the first one, and the Lord didn't want to have a king in the first place, he chose a shepherd, the least likely of the sons of Jesse, David. And even though David certainly was not perfect, he was the greatest of the kings of Israel and honored as such. Even Matthew presented Jesus as the new David. And that brings us to today's gospel from John. You know, in John's gospel, it was the last one written, and it was one that was most specifically identifying the idea of the divinity of Jesus. The first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, talked about it, but really didn't. It was such a radical statement to say God could be man that they kind of really didn't get into it. But John did, and he had a series of statements that are called the eimi statements. Eimi is the Greek word for I am. And then today's gospel, one of those eimi statements is, I am the good shepherd. And then Jesus, it's the only time that Jesus identifies himself as the shepherd. But then he tells us what it means to be a good shepherd. To think of others rather than self. To really even be willing to lay down his life for others. And indeed, we see that is exactly what Jesus did. But when we look at the context of shepherd with the tradition of it, and with the eimi statement, it is saying is this is a God-like quality to shepherd, to take care of the people. And Jesus indeed, as John keeps reminding us with eimi, he was divine. But we don't stop there. Because as disciples, we are called to do the work of Jesus. You might say is to do divine work. And that means to think of others rather than self. There are shepherds all over the place. In fact, during this virus, I think we can look particularly at the doctors and the nurses who are indeed putting their lives at risk, laying it down, to shepherd, to heal, to take care of the sick and the vulnerable. But you know, it's not just them. As disciples of Jesus, we are called to do the same. And that is to think of others rather than self. To think of those who are in need and say, what can I do for you? How can I shepherd you? How can I help you? Jesus has certainly given us a high bar, something to strive for and to attend. But that indeed is what we must do, to follow the example of the Good Shepherd.